So welcome as folks are joining. We're so happy to have you here today for our EdHub AI webinar, an AIC webinar on harnessing Slate AI from implementation to innovation. I am joined by a few of my colleagues here today, and I'm going to let them each introduce themselves. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see all of our wonderful faces. I'll start. I am Jasmine Solomon. I am the Senior Associate Director for Systems at NYU. I work in our undergraduate admissions operations team, supporting all three campuses, as well as all non-degree students who are seeking either pre-college or visiting student undergraduate level coursework, and managing all of our technical systems and their integration. And I have been in Slate since 2016, so I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary in December. And my preferred LLM is Gemini, not by my own choice, but because we are an NYU is a Google for Education school, and Gemini is the tool that is integrated in my workspace. And I'm going to pass it over to Jill to introduce herself.
Hey everyone, I'm Jill Motyka. I'm the Director of Graduate Admissions and Operations at Northeastern University. So I support the operational side of our graduate admissions. We've been in Slate for going on 4 years now, and our preferred LLM is Claude. Pass it over to Michael.
Good afternoon, everyone. Michael White, Associate Director for Enrollment Management and Technology and Admission at Slippery Rock University in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. I am the lead of, I think we have 4 or 5 captains, and so I sit sort of at the top of that. And we have been involved with Slate since pandemic. We actually implemented during pandemic, so we did it via Zoom. So we never met in person. So have fun with that. My favorite LLM, it actually started with ChatGPT. ChatGPT knows me very well. Those of you who mess around with these know how they can become very close to you. But Claude is currently my favorite LLM currently right now. I'm going to pass it on to Joe.
Hey everyone, great to have you all here. My name is Joe Johnson, he, him, Senior Associate Dean of Admissions and Director of Admissions Communications at Lewis and Clark College out in Portland, Oregon. I work in the undergraduate side, but we do have separate instances for a couple other aspects of the Lewis and Clark College community. My role, I've been in Slate for 10 years, 8 of those as a power user across a few different instances, including support implementing PNACAC, the Pacific Northwest ACAC's Slate instance just a couple of years ago. Let's see. My preferred LLM, I started with ChatGPT. I'm trying to dabble with Claude a little bit more lately because I think it's going to be a little better suited to a lot of the work that I do with styling and HTML and kind of supporting the comms and marketing landscape that I'm in.
Awesome. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. And so for everyone who's in attendance, what will happen today is we're each going to share a brief, about 5-minute presentation about kind of where we each are with our Slate AI journeys, either using native Slate AI tools or integrating other AI tools into Slate, or in my case, which we're about to hear about, our AI governance journey, which is maybe a little less exciting, but might feel close to home. And then we have a few questions that we'll chat about as a panel, and we're going to close with your own questions. So please do use that Q&A feature throughout so that we have some great questions to end on. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen to start. All right. So hopefully that is now sharing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence in undergraduate admissions at New York University. So I'm going to start just by framing this a little bit with what AI governance looks like at NYU and within undergraduate admissions. So all vendors must meet NYU IT's high standards for data privacy and security prior to implementation. So this includes both new AI vendors that we might be bringing on. For example, we do have an AI chatbot that we launched back in March of 2024, as well as existing vendors like Slate, who then are releasing AI features into a tool we already use. So those new AI features go through this review process. And then within undergraduate admissions, we are making sure that our staff understand our institution data risk policy and are using the right data with the right tools that are approved. And that our tools are accompanied with proper training and appropriate use so that they know how to recognize bias in it and use it appropriately. So today's focus, of course, is Slate AI. And so what we did is we formed a working group. We had multiple teams and campuses represented. If you're not familiar with NYU, we have degree granting campuses in New York, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai. And our undergraduate admissions office is centralized. So we have folks at all of those locations supporting students in all of those journeys, as well as the non-degree group. So we had all campuses, all teams represented, and we were evaluating 5 Slate AI features that NYU IT had approved for use. So one of them was AI dashboards on records. Another was AI bots in inbox, so using AI to answer emails. AI in reader, AI data analysis and queries. This is the old AI data analysis, the one that was released back in 2025, not the new one in AI Data Explorer that just came out. And also AI with CSS and HTML design. And so what we did was we looked first, we did kind of 3 phases to our review. We started with the knowledge base and things in the community. Because IT took time to approve these, there were already community use cases out there for us to look at. So we started out with those. Then we actually started in Clean Slate in the showcase environment and spinning up tools with test data and looking at the showcase examples that were there of how these tools were being used. And then we moved into our own test environment. And finally, we made our recommendations. So I'm going to share a little bit about what those recommendations were. Again, this is specific to NYU, to our tool stack, to what worked for us. Like I mentioned, we weren't looking at the AI chatbot because we already had one stood up. If you don't have an AI chatbot, obviously this is a different conversation at your institution. So for dashboards, we really liked how they worked. We thought that they would be a great asset to our frontline customer service folks so that they could reduce that click depth and get an answer to the student on the phone or on the email or on the chat much faster. The one problem is we are going to actually have to redesign our full dashboard so that we're not just putting duplicative information on top of it. We want to strip it down and then rebuild it with this in mind. But we are moving forward with that for this coming cycle. For AI bots in inbox, we did a lot of testing on this. Your AI snippet instruction for the agent really matters. It was having a tone that was too chatbot-y, too like, what's your next question? When we were trying to use it for a transactional email, where we just wanted it to resolve the issue and end the conversation, not invite back and forth when it was a clear answer. So we did a lot of testing there. The other hiccup there is the knowledge sources take a long time to be crawled. And so you really need to plan in advance for that, but this is fully underway and will be used. For AI Reader, we were a little more targeted in our use for this because of the UI. So you have to kind of refresh between files. You have to build the context window. You can't ask it across multiple documents. All of this is great for security, for making sure that the AI tool is limited, is doing exactly what you want it to do, but it makes it harder for the user to build that context quickly. So our beta adoption is really referencing, we have like a few specific use cases where we think it might be great. One is with international transcripts and helping parse those and highlight where information is. And the other is for our transfer population with prerequisites and having it know exactly what prerequisites are required for which majors and helping the reader find those quickly. And lastly, for the data analysis, again, this is the old one The new Data Explorer is still currently under review with NYU IT, so we haven't played with it yet. But for the old one, we found it to be a little clunky, and it was great for a quick look. So limited use, if a staff member just needs a bit of information and a guesstimate is fine, bless, move forward. Try it out, use it, but not for any official reporting. And the same for the CSS and HTML design, but for a different reason. We found it super powerful with prototyping. It could match our brand, but the problem was that it looked pretty to an uninformed eye. And so we need our subject matter experts who really understand CSS and HTML to make sure that behind the scenes it really is actually meeting both our brand guidelines and our accessibility standards. So yeah, that is all that I have for my part of the presentation. And I'm going to stop sharing and pass it on to Jill. And if you have any quick questions about that, feel free to put them in the Q&A and I'll answer them as we move forward.
Thank you, Jasmine. So I'm presenting on an implementation that we did using Slate's AI chatbot. We called it Ask, the Application Support and Knowledge. Just again, a little bit more about Northeastern and the reason why we had a use for this. We are not just in the Northeast. We have 12 campuses, including 3 countries, offering undergraduate, graduate, doctoral, non-degree, pretty much you name it, we have it. Again, I specifically support graduate admissions, and about 60 to 70% of our students are international applicants. We do in-house foreign credential evaluation. Again, we're in 3 different countries, which means that some of the answers that we may be given may be specific to the country that they're looking to attend classes in. We average about 100,000 applications a year, which means there's a lot of applicant questions, am I right? So that is where the goal of having an embedded chatbot directly onto the application status page. This is not public. This is not a live. If anyone has had questions about the Slate AI chatbot and the control and ability to see what it had, it is a little bit limited. So we didn't want to just throw something out there on a public URL. So we do have it specifically geared towards someone who has already applied and has questions specifically related to their application. Gives real-time responses when the applicants need it the most, which again, we're dealing with international students, which means any time of the day, we could be having applicants that need answers. Reduces the overflow to our partner teams and incoming inquiries. And ideally, there's knowledge at their fingertips. There's no hunting. We are a very complex institution, which means sometimes finding answers at Northeastern is a little bit challenging. So how we got started, I am not a Slate super user. I am, admissions operations. I have a Slate team. But I was very excited when I came back from the Slate Summit last year about this prospect. So I just dove right in. So I followed the steps in the article for creating the AI chatbot. I started with the suggested prompts that Slate gives. And then I use Claude to recommend prompts. So we do have an article support center, and that's housed currently through Salesforce. So I was actually able to get a report off of what types of questions people ask that to help kind of guide what our prompts may be. And then we tested and we tweaked and we tested again and we ran it through leadership, and leadership came back with recommendations on what they wanted for system prompts. We started building in August 2025, piloted through the fall of 2025, and we implemented at the beginning of this year. As far as resources, again, we use our article support center that we already had built. We have college admission URLs, college new student URLs. We did customize chatbot training through system prompts, as Jasmine mentioned. Sometimes the crawling of resources can take a little bit. So if it's something that you want to make sure the chatbot is giving the correct answer for, I rely upon all kind of training the system prompts and not just relying upon the URLs that it's crawling from. And again, we use the history of the common questions asked in the support center to kind of guide what this would look like. So some of the examples of system prompts, our leadership was just like governance, they wanted to make sure that people knew that they were asking an AI questions, not a live person, not to make promises, do not suggest that the person is admissible, or that we're going to give them money. So definitely, again, that risk management thing specifically in the system prompts, training it to on how and what they should not, the AI should not be answering. And then a lot of questions come into us that are not related to us. So questions on visas or billing or things like that. So directing the system prompts to direct them to another resource if it's not something related to us. As far as the user experience, as I mentioned, this is embedded into our application status portal. So only those that have already submitted an application can access this chatbot. So it is customized just to be answering questions related to someone who would have submitted an application. Yes, our status portal is a little busy. So as you can see, this is where a chatbot may come in handy because there's a lot of information on this one page, but we did customize it. That was a new feature that Slate came out with. So we did, originally it was the Slate blue colors. We've now been able to customize it to the Northeastern red. There are certainly limitations, but now after the recent Slate Summit, we may have more solutions with the history option that they announced. But one of the things that we didn't have starting out was there was no history. There was no way to tell what questions people were asking or what answers the chatbot was giving. So what we used was a Slate-based form. So after the AI chatbot gives an answer, it asks them if that answer was helpful. If the person says no, it gives them this option to complete a form to give us feedback. Since introducing the chatbot in around January, we've only had 3 people that have provided responses. Again, we're kind of a little bit blind to, is that good or is it bad? But we do have a mechanism for being able to get feedback. The other challenge that we had with the Slate chatbot was there was no way to tell if people were even using the chatbot. So great, we only got 3 people that submitted something that they didn't like their answer, but is anybody actually clicking on it? So our way of resolving that was to embed a Google event tag into the chatbot. So then we're using Google Analytics to determine how many people are actually clicking on the chatbot. Again, limited, doesn't really tell us how many people are actually asking the chatbot questions. But it was able to give us how many people were actually clicking on the chatbot. Now the history is available. I've started to kind of play around with that a little bit since it was announced at Summit. There's limitations for that. There's no reporting of that. You only get a couple of days of history. So if you don't keep up with going in and capturing that. So I'm hoping that Slate comes out with more reporting options with the history. But we're only kind of a month into learning more about that. The analysis from the first 6 months of our data launch, we use internal cases. We don't have admissions email or we don't have a phone. So what we have is applicants can put in an inquiry into our team if they have questions related to their application or they need to defer or things like that. We were averaging about 2,200 cases a month prior to the launch of the chatbot, and we were able to reduce the amount of inquiries coming into us by 51% once we launched the chatbot. I was able to break this down even more by college. Again, we have multiple colleges, and this then helped us to determine, as you can see, we had inquiries increase at 2 colleges. I was able to then use Claude to kind of say, okay, tell me why, what inquiries specifically increased, and then look at those and go, okay, well, that makes sense. For instance, our DeMoore McKim School of Business, their deadline extensions increased by 226%, requests for deadline extensions, but they just this year went to open enrollment versus in previous years. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It had nothing to do necessarily with the chat bot not being able to answer the question. So I will post these or have these resources. It's the link to how to get started in creating the Slate AI chatbot, the new article on adjusting for branding, a new article on using the conversation history, which again was just announced at the summit. And then if anybody has any interest in how do you embed the Google event tag, I also have the resource for that. So that is all I had, and I am going to. For now, I will pass it over to Joe.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Jill. My session I'll be sharing some details on is a little bit more about how we constructed an AI-powered org dashboard. A lot of people think about AI dashboards in Slate as focused on core records, on specifically person records. A lot of the examples we see at Summit, a lot of the examples we see are previews of donor records, analysis of application history and potential for yield and things like that. But I realized when it was first launched, it was only available for person records. Shortly before Summit 2025, I want to say it was around February or March, maybe March of 2025, they released org dashboards for additional record types. And so this kind of went a little under the radar. So this may be an area that you have not really seen a lot of. We realized that for us, we had a little bit of a problem when it came to understanding and sharing organization data. Perhaps you or someone on your team, territory managers on your team, ask questions like, how productive is XYZ school for our enrollment goals? I'm going to a new territory. If I only have time to visit one school, should I visit school A or should I visit school B? A lot of times, if you're in a new region, if you're in a new territory, or you're hiring new staff, there's concerns about like, how do I prioritize? How do I use the information that's available? Because there's already extensive data in Slate about your organization, about application trends and yield rates for your particular school or college or institution. That data is all in Slate. But unless you're a Power Query user, it's challenging to get that data out. It's challenging to display that data, and it's challenging to come up with insights about that data. So this was the problem that I identified, that if I felt like I could solve this, it would potentially make travel planning a little bit easier, especially for newer staff to our team. So this is, we're going to break it apart, but this is the actual finished product. You throw on this AI dashboard onto a series of pre-built dashboards or embed it in the new dashboard creation tool that was announced at this year's summit. And it literally, I've programmed it to give me a brief 4-sentence overview of this school and its importance to our enrollment funnel, with a scoring breakdown that you can click on as a dropdown to show you how the scoring process came out, how many points. And I had 3 buckets, either low priority, medium priority, or high priority. So I can say, okay, great. It is a medium priority school. Why is that? Because we got a deposit in the last 4 cycles. We've gotten some admits. We have a substantial number of future inquiries. Those were the biggest scoring point factors. But there's a lot going on here. There's an analysis in 4 sentences. There's data that's getting pulled in. There's data that's getting analyzed. There's a scoring process that's happening. And then there's a bucketing, bucket process that's happening. So there's a lot of steps here. So let's kind of break apart how this is working. First, you gotta do some complicated queries here. If you're not familiar with joins, you're not going to be able to unlock the full power of Slate AI unless you really start practicing joins. So here's an example of one of the aggregate counts that I set up. I highly recommend, if you have not built these in a query library for the organization's data set, you should do that. That should be a top priority this summer, building out some query library stuff. You can pre-build one time these multiple joins from an org to a school to a person to an application, and then to application-related round data, period data. And that's how you can get aggregate counts of how many deposits have we had over the course of X number of cycles from this school. And then, because we have query copy paste ability, all you have to do is Control C on this query that you've built, paste it into a query library, subquery filter or export, and boom, there you go. So that's my tip for you. You don't have to build each one of these on its own. You can just make some slight tweaks to them and copy each one over. But this is kind of the breakdown of how these filters are constructed. This data deposits, admits, apps for most recent 4-year cycle and historical 4-year cycle are the data that's being used and compared in that overview. So if you noticed in this previous sentence, applications increased from 3 to 6. The data that's the Slate AI tool is using right here is the old 4-year historical data aggregate and comparing it to the new 4-year aggregate. So I've instructed using all of this query data, telling the Slate AI, okay, first box on the dashboard, here's the information that I want displayed. Here's the information that you should be prepared to pull out and use, that I want to see on my dashboard. You don't need to worry about the formatting in this initial box. This is just about what data do I want you to make sure you have available to pull. Then in this prompt section, this is where you explain and instruct the AI dashboard tool to do a whole bunch of stuff. The instructions here are so long, I could not just fit them on one slide. I do have a full write-up in the Slate forums under Get Inspired, and I encourage you to take a peek at that. There's a section about overview of instructions, overview of scoring process, calculations for the scoring process, some things to help with the formatting, and I have a debugging tool. So if the AI recognizes that within this instruction set, the final score out of potential 28 points for our 3 low, medium, high priority buckets, if it identifies that there's an issue in the scoring or that it put itself in the wrong bucket, I want it to tell me where the issue is and how it messed up the math along the way. And the Slate AI has actually been pretty upfront about, I said it was a high priority school, but upon review of the numbers, it actually is a medium priority school. I'm sorry about that. So once in a while, there's a slight reliability issue. And so this is not something that I use as a end all be all insight, like make a decision based off of this. It really is just supporting evidence. It's just an extra tool to help our team expand their awareness of a new region. So kind of in summary, this is really supposed to be a dynamic org insight. It's supposed to be taking in live counts of inquiries and prospects. I even have a comparison of how many inquiries do we have today compared to the same day 1 year ago. So we can have a sense of, are these numbers growing? And that relies on a join to the inquiry status change date section of Slate data. But any organization data or any person data that you can access can get pulled into an org dashboard like this or any other record dataset focused record dashboard. Now, this scoring process that I talk about, I do want to differentiate. There is a difference between a vendor scoring model that you may have in your Slate instance that puts schools in groups of 1 through 10 or a top 5 priority bracket or a top 3 tier of schools for your institution. This is different because this AI dashboard does not store this score breakdown, low, medium, high priority. It doesn't get stored anywhere. But this process of creating kind of an in-house scoring model based on the data that you have available could be a first step to eventually doing in-house scoring for something like org records. Any data point you have, consumer data, income data from zip codes, high school enrollment data, anything like that can be pulled into this dashboard for its insights. Here's a full write-up, and here's another little not moving example of the overview, so you can see what it's doing. Compared with 1922 through 23 to 26, apps increased. It even gave me a percent. I don't think I asked AI to do that, but it's giving me a percent in this particular one. And then here's that little scoring breakdown you can click on and drop down. But here's the full link for the Get Inspired write-up. And at the end, I'll also drop my Slate community profile in case you want to send me follow-up questions about that. That's all from me. I'm going to pass it over to Michael.
But I want to talk to you from the perspective of AI as a teammate and how my relationship, my personal relationship with AI has allowed me to do some pretty decent things here at Slippery Rock University and encourage the rest of the enrollment management team to begin to embrace AI technology as well. Because I know back in 23, when I 20 late 22, early 23, when I first mentioned generative AI and talked about how things were going to change drastically, folks looked at me with a blank slate as if I was talking from a different dimension. And I thought it was pretty hilarious. But over time, I've been able to do some things and encourage folks. And I feel that now that Technolutions has done a tremendous job of adding Slate tool or AI tools to the Slate CRM product, it's going to allow a lot of us to really encourage others and create really some excellent recruitment strategies and recruitment opportunities, like Joe just demonstrated and Jill just demonstrated. But you know, my story is really one of how do I answer answer a problem? Right? Folks have problems, they have issues, and I want to try and solve them. Once I got connected with artificial intelligence, I answering those questions became a lot easier. Initially, it was a tough road to go when I was trying to do so. So I have, there are two paths of AI adoption, right? There's sort of what Jasmine talked about in terms of the institutional governance with steering committees and formal policies and the like. I mean, here at Slippery Rock, we haven't really gotten to that level, right? We're a small shop, smaller, not tiny, but smaller shop, and the conversation around these things is only just beginning to percolate. As a matter of fact, I sit on a data governance committee, but it's institutional wide. It's not necessarily really devoted to enrollment management, but we are certainly beginning to have our own thoughts and creating our own policy around AI. But it's an individual practice for me. Started with problems, as I mentioned, not a plan. I turned it into, a daily thought partner. I mean, we have conversations on a regular basis about many things, but when it turns to work, those conversations really take on a more significant meaning for me. Iteration over approved cycles and full ownership. I have full ownership of the solutions that I come up with. They're not anyone else's, they're mine. And so I'm proud of that, but it certainly does suggest that there's a point in time when the university, certainly the enrollment division, has to certainly begin to take ownership of some of these things. So these are some of the things that I just wanted to mention, come up with. One that I will shout out, John Thornton. He's a pretty good guy. If any of you have seen some of his work, he's done some good things, and I'm shouting him out because I stole his Slate to Banner dashboard tool where you click on the person's banner ID and it takes you right to the screen that you're looking to get to. You should have seen or you should have heard the kind of joy that I got from the support team when they were able to use it. I was a superstar. And so, but I actually used AI to help me build that because there were some things in there that John did that I certainly didn't have the skill set to do. And because of my relationship, right, with Claude, I was able to really work that out fairly well. And that's the other thing is that you know, as an undergrad, I was a philosophy major, right? And in grad, I was a policy major. And so I'm not, I'm not in it by any means, any stretch, a technologically strong adept person. But over the years, the whole idea and notion of working in technology has been something that I felt very strongly about, especially in enrollment. We need that. And now that we have AI, now that we have Technolutions embracing AI like it is, it's extending my career a little bit. I've been around a while. Those who may know me, I've been around a while. So I'm pretty excited about it. But, one, you can see here, I have a four-gate fraud detection framework with workflow built in to end. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that a little bit later because I feel that that one is something that many folks may be concerned about these days especially as it relates to saving your institution um, the the from losing a lot of money. We'll just say that when it comes to fraud. Uh, then I did the enrollment student portal. What was interesting about this is that I was asked last year to just turn the enrollment portal that Slate already offers, right? They have the enrollment portal. But I was asked to also include the admitted students. And so, there was a little bit of a challenge for me to do that because of some of the ways that you had to write the queries and then build the methods and those kind of things so that you're actually getting the right connection. But I also, through work with Claude and some really advanced level SQL, was able to get when a student moved from the applicant portal, right, the delivered applicant, Slate applicant portal, as soon as they were offered admission, their login automatically took them to the admitted enrolled student portal. And so there was really no need for any kind of handoff, so to speak. It just the way that the SQL is written allows for that to just happen seamlessly. And so the students are able to really log in and they're right into that admitted enrolling portal. And now there are visuals that they're getting based on the fact that they're offered admission. We want you to deposit. And that's different than you're enrolled. These are the next steps before you actually land yourself on campus. And so that was a pretty exciting thing to do, and folks are really excited about that. The last one here is the GPA band scholarship automation, which um, some of you probably are doing this in your reader dashboard, in your reader. In the reader, when our decision makers are making decisions, I've set it up so that they can actually now also approve scholarship. And Slate is actually selecting students based on GPA for the scholarship that then in the reader is the approver is able to actually make the approval process and then schedule the person for their scholarship letter. And so all of that, all of those things, all of these things, it would have taken me a long time to do were it not for my relationship with AI. And I didn't do it all outside of Slate AI. I actually was sort of in concert with. And so there were things that I would determine and assess in Slate AI. And once Slate AI gave me the response, I would take that to Claude and then find out some further way details about how I might do this in a different way. The fraud detection I wanted to mention is really a tool out of necessity, right? We needed to find ways to sort of have um, clearer understanding or at least belief that we were catching as many as we could people who were committing fraud. And part of it is, we all know, none of us, I mean, I don't know about the rest of you 160 or whatever are on here, but none of us have been trained to be fraud detectors. None of us have had any formal training in that, at least not here at Slippery Rock. And so we're trying to sort of learn all of the different measures and indicators that will allow us to sort of detect who they might be so that we could uh, uh, assign them with the proper fraud designation. And this fraud tool lives in the dashboard reader. So it's really nothing more than, building it sort of like a dashboard. And it has general general information about the record, but then it has those items that we use to sort of determine or at least assess whether there's being fraud being committed. It also includes 4 or 5 other indicators that show whether an applicant has shared IP addresses with others, or shared email addresses, or shared phone numbers, or shared addresses, right? Home addresses. It has those kinds of things built into it as well, such that when it gives you a count, so it gives you a count of them, uh, you click on the link and it shows you actually who those populations are, so that you can do further evaluation and analysis. It also brings in the Stripe verification tool, so that if you actually decide that this person or these people are potential fraud, you can right from that spot click on the Stripe verification piece, and it will take you to that, so that you can put this student through the app Stripe verification, and then whatever responses come back also come back to this reader dashboard tool. And so it's really a nice tool that there's no way I'm doing this without AI's assistance. There is a lot of SQL, and I know that, under Technolution terms, you take your chance on using a lot of SQL because of things that might change internally. But I think for now, the way that this is working out, it certainly suggest that there's some good opportunity for us to make use of this and save the institution lots of money. We'll say that. Um, and so, AI certainly won't replace many of us. That's not the goal. I mean, right? It's not the goal, but it certainly should allow us to sort of amplify some of the things that we're trying to do in the recruitment realm. And so, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I think we covered a really great breadth of the tools that are available and at all of our fingertips, especially if you are a Slate institution joining us. So I do have a few questions that will kind of round table and go through. The first one is if anyone wants to share about any specific implementation successes or speed bumps you've hit as you've tried to roll out any of the AI features.
I'll only say this. There are obviously speed bumps, because people talk about prompt engineering and what have you. You're only going to get solid response when you give it solid recommendations or solid prompting. And so it really requires a lot of that. And so there's a lot of trial in there. So time can be, you could extend time in terms of your development with it. But I will say that what was to me, one of the best implementation, or at least new implementation that Slate Technolutions has done, was give you the opportunity to screenshot and share that as part of your prompt engineering. So in other words, you click on the link and you could paste in what you're trying to describe instead of putting it all into words. I hated doing that because it took so much more of my time. But now I can actually simply take the screenshot, pop it in, and make the conversation go a lot quicker.
One piece that I'll add in is all of these models, whether you're using an internal Slate AI model or you're using any of the external LLMs that are out there, they're giving you answers based on the probability that what they're saying is what you're looking for. It's all probabilistic. I mean, it's the odds are very strong that this is what this person is looking for. So that's the answer I'm going to give to them. It's not deterministic. And so you have to be really careful if you're using these AI tools for determinations of information or direct assessments of information, you have to be a little bit more skeptical in those cases because it's giving you what is most likely to be the answer that you're looking for, what is most likely to be the right answer, not necessarily the right answer.
That's a great point, especially working in admissions where sometimes you do only have one or two students who fit a certain profile, and you might have thousands who fit another profile, and you don't want to get them lost in those probabilities. Yeah. For us, I would definitely say there's a lot of speed bumps when you're at an institution that has a lot of governance, but also you just kind of have to shift your perspective and be thankful that the institution is investing in experts who know about things that I don't know about. I'm not a data privacy expert. I'm not a data security expert. So it does give me some sense of comfort knowing that there are other people at the institution who that is their full-time job. And once they approve the tool, then I know I can run full speed ahead and I don't have to um, look back anymore. So it's like you get past the speed bump zone, out of the school zone, and then you're flying on the highway. So it feels good now to be entering this cycle with implementation insight.
And I would say for us, that's the biggest speed bump is the hesitation. It's the human speed bumps. It's a great idea. But there's a lot of discussions that have to happen and a lot of risk analysis that has to be done before kind of implementing things, which isn't a bad thing to fully test and vet something, but it definitely slows down the process when you're excited about something that is working really well.
Yes, agreed. And for those of you who are still in that governance speed bump area, I do strongly recommend checking out Clean Slate and the showcase environments there as a very safe playground where you can at least experiment with the tools and become familiar with the user interface and how they work, even if you aren't allowed to use them with your institutional data yet, if it's still under review. And so we did cover a few of the questions that I had prepared. I think throughout the presentations, we got some really great tips around Slate AI snippets and working with them. But if anyone has any tips that they didn't get to share already that they would like to share now for your Slate AI tips for prompting or maybe prompts that work really well with Claude.
I mean, I'll just jump in and add that it's not just about, for the Slate context, it's not just about creating Slate AI snippets. It's about leveraging all of the different varieties and spaces in which you can have those snippets live and be aware. There's global prompts, there's um, specific tool prompts that are only applied in Reader, or strategies or tone or language that is only applied in the query tool. Um, you can often show things based on just URLs, not even um, tools within Slate, but actual specific URLs of your instance. There's a lot of hypersensitivity that you can give to these AI snippets and prompts. That it's not just, okay, in our instance, you need to do XYZ. Your Slate AI should be doing different things for you in the query tool than it should in the deliver tool, than it should if you're asking it questions when you're building a form. It needs to be adaptive, and you need to create adaptive prompts for that because Technolutions has given us the ability to do that. And frankly, speaking from someone who is a little bit of an AI skeptic and has a lot of hesitancies about the way that it impacts the environment, and that's a whole other conversation and panel topic. But if you're not using these AI snippets, you're missing opportunities to scale down the the use of electricity. You're scaling down the use for these tools. You're going to have it otherwise be constantly recreating and shifting its answers based on your prompts in the actual chat tool rather than at the system level. So creating these prompts is actually a way to help your institution be more efficient with this technology.
Yeah, it's so true, especially those system ones that are always applying, and that are layering on top of the more specific snippets you might have in other places. Completely agree. You said something there though that really leads us in nicely to another question. So I want to open the floor for this one. How do you approach the AI skeptics on your team or within yourself to cultivate buy-in for trying these new tools?
The way that I did it was, as I mentioned to you earlier, I first presented some fun ideas and thoughts around it so that folks could see it in a different light rather than just what the news media and folks who are not really high on it would say. But when you show how it can actually specifically help you in your personal daily work, or maybe even your just as a person, how it can help in some areas without causing harm or without giving you bad information. I think that that's when people start feeling a little bit more comfortable with it. Like I said, the support team when I was in that little dashboard that takes them to from Slate to Banner. I'm serious how excited a number of people were about that, and how it sort of just opened things up and allowed for a greater conversation. But I also think that the fact that the primary tool that we use for recruitment is also pushing this in a way that can be help us to be more successful, allows me to encourage more people to feel comfortable with it. Um, and when they see the results of some of the activity, that's when it changes. But you got to start out with something that really allows them to enjoy the experience first, I feel, and then they can move on to something else.
I think what
Yeah.
Michael touched upon is at the end of the day is the results. It's not just building something and you put it out there and okay, it's running, or it's having something to back it up to say this is working, and it's working correctly. And using that, for instance, in my, I know everybody, my slides are in the chat. Apologies that I wasn't, I was having technical difficulties, but not only just saying, okay, the chatbot's out there and it's answering questions, but saying I can directly attribute to a significant reduction in applicant inquiries once we launch the chatbot. Um, I'm fortunate in working for an institution that is heavily AI focused, and everyone's goals have to kind of include some sort of AI component to it. So there's a lot of emphasis on efficiencies using AI tools. But I'm kind of one of the skeptics of that's great. It's AI, but is it actually doing anything that is working and that is making an impact?
Yeah, for us, one of the things that we're really looking at with the AI dashboard in particular on records is that we're not just throwing on another section to an already crowded page, which is it's something that you also talked about, Jill, in your portals, and having the chatbot not just add more crowding and more visual noise to it. And so we really, when we're thinking about the user adoption, I'm in the process of this whole like survey of the whole staff of like what parts of the dashboard do you use? We're not talking to them yet about the AI dashboard that's going to be added to it to solve most of the issues, but we're going to then after the survey relate it back and be like the AI dashboard is taking care of these top 4 things that you said you care about every time you go to a record, which we then hope will drive their user adoption. The reason it's not in the survey is because they don't know about it yet. You can't ask for what you don't know about. So like for most of our staff, they're not they're not privy to the fact that Slate can do these AI dashboards, so they wouldn't know how to ask about it. So we're more just gathering the other information, the information they do know about as humans who are deeply invested in this work. They know what information they care about when they go to a student's record based on their role in our office and when they're supporting them in their journey. And so I do want to also ask one more question for ours, and then we'll jump into the audience Q&A. How are you keeping the human in the loop and at the center of our very human work in admissions of helping students continue their academic journeys? I could start. This is something that you've all also mentioned about, and it was very nicely reiterated in Michael's slides at the end, that it's AI isn't making the decisions. It's getting us the information in front of us that we need to then make an informed decision or make an informed best next step for that record. And so I think that that is really critical, that when we're at NYU, when we're working with staff and encouraging them to work with AI, we're making sure that they understand that they are firmly still in the driver's seat and still firmly responsible for every decision they're making as a professional member of our team, and that it is just one more tool in their tool belt, and it is not a replacement in any way.
That's what I would say. My from the, even prior to AI days, my biggest question to my team was always, what is it of your process that you're cruising along, you're going, you're going, you're going, and then all of a sudden, boom, it stops. Those are the points that I need to know about so that I can put in efficiencies and remove those roadblocks. And that is what AI is helping us do. I didn't present on it, but what we're using Claude now is taking all of our review guides. Again, we have multiple colleges, all of them have different rubrics and requirements, application requirements and everything. And we're having Claude build us basically a tool that we can quickly go in and see, okay, how many letters of recommendation does this particular program for this particular college need versus going into a comprehensive guide and looking at it. That Claude tool can help us find that answer faster. So it's preventing that. I'm going and oop, now I've stopped because now I have to go look up something in a resource. So that's how we're presenting it. Is it's definitely not removing the human element. It's removing the frustrations that humans are facing.
I also think using these tools as learning opportunities for yourself. It's not just about streamlining the work of you and your colleagues. You have to also understand what it is, this finished product that you're creating. How can you learn from it so that you can troubleshoot it, so that you can eventually start, writing these CSS, style guides for your team and, come up with new tools. I've learned so much because I'm treating a lot of these tools as, training resources for myself, so that I can then go in and say, oh, actually, what this tool gave me, it's actually not going to fit with what I'm trying to do in this because I've learned from that opportunity. Don't just leave the learning to these LLMs. You should be learning too.
I love that. And in our last minute, I am going to also address one of the questions that came in the Q&A, which dovetails nicely into this, which is, how are you addressing the concerns and curiosity from prospective applicants with how you're using AI in your offices? Do you speak to it? We in NYU, we added a statement to our Common App last year that mentions that any AI tool that we're using, our staff are fully trained on, and that it is never making the decision. So that's right on our Common App college information page, front and center for students to see it. But I'm curious, I know we're going to all be getting questions as our staff are going on the road, and they'll be asking us technical experts back in the office, how do I answer this? What do I say? So how are you addressing it?
Honestly, we don't use the Common App, and it's easy. There's no where that we would have AI involved in the admission process. So that's very easy for us.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, the
Go ahead.
decision-making process,
Yes.
admission decision.
Yeah, nothing
Well,
that we have posted yet. We haven't gotten many questions on this yet. I do anticipate that we will start to get more. But I'm with Michael in that the majority of our applications are not common apps at the graduate level. Majority of them are slate-based applications.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. We are out of time. I think we really jam-packed that hour with lots of insights. I deeply appreciate you all joining us here for this EdHub AI webinar. Feel free to drop in the chat to everyone wherever you prefer to be contacted. And I'll also be adding some links to our LinkedIn group, the Slate AI community user group, and our website if you want to look for our future events. And thank you everyone so much for coming here and joining us today.